Assalamualaikum. My name is Zain Ali, and welcome to my channel called Connecting the Dots, where exploration has no bounds, and we're going to be um, going over a wide range of topics and explaining different facets in society. Many of these videos are going to be from a wide range of topics, from politics and geopolitics to cricket, to history, to entertainment. And I'm really excited to be able to do these reviews and do these conversations with all of you. And the first of what we're going to be talking about, the first couple of videos, is going to be in regards to these elections which are taking place in 2024. Just yesterday was New Year's. So now we are in the year of big elections in the world, in India, Pakistan, in the United States, in Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. And so the next two or three videos will be going over the intricacies of the elections and the electoral process of the United States, Pakistan, and India. Today we'll start with the United States, but I really encourage all of you guys to join us, join my channel and subscribe and tag along for more information and more reviews and more discussion in regards to these issues. So in the U.S. general election of 2024, it's very interesting because the Democrat Party actually already has a candidate. If you think about it, pretty much dead set that President Biden is going to be rerunning for re-election. And on the Republican side, there's a bit of a squander going on right now between four candidates who keep showing up to the presidential debates, but there's one outlier, someone who is doing way better than all of them in the polls, President Trump, who decides to take a different approach in regards to the electoral campaigns and isn't really joining their primaries because he's doing so well in the polls. He's way ahead of all the other candidates. And all other candidates, such as Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley and Chris Christie and Ron DeSantis, some of them are using anti-Trump rhetoric to get to the moderate vote, and it seems that they're all trying to fit in some way in some ploy to cross Donald Trump in regards to his primaries performance. And he's indicted right now, President Trump. So there's actually a little bit of a there's a wobble here because he's been kind of disqualified from running in Colorado and in Maine. So it's looking like there's a lot of legal issues with him, and he wants to relaunch his bid, but he's having trouble kind of engaging with the media again, like he does in the past. He has a very bad relationship with the media, and there's no positives that the media obviously has to say about him out in front. Obviously, I'm talking about moderates and leftist media. And as of August 2023, he faces like 91 criminal charges, and this is a former president of the United States, and right now he's kind of in an issue. Like he is popular amongst a general population in the South and in the Midwest, but his issues with the legal system currently are not solved, and this is causing a lot of problems for him in his whole process. And after him is of course Ron DeSantis, who gained a little bit of popularity recently, but his issue is that he's way more conservative in regards to his social approaches for many Americans to really connect with him on that level. And he's also been part of the book banning in Florida, and a lot of people have issues with that. And his popularity has gone down because of some of his statements. I mean, obviously, um, all the Republican candidates, separating Vivek, are targeting Donald Trump for the bid for the Republican candidacy position. When the issue for the Republican Party right now is how are they going to match up to Joe Biden, which well we'll get to later about how his issue is going down and how his ill performance is helping the Republican Party build their own narrative. But currently, what's going on is that Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, for example, both of these individuals, and Chris Christie for that matter, they all are very anti-Donald Trump, and their election campaigns are going on the basis of an anti-Trump rhetoric, which could be working in some regards to some Republican supporters who are also fed up with Donald Trump, but it's actually harming their approach because all of these individuals have taken past help from Trump, have got endorsements from him, and Nikki Haley served as the ambassador to the United Nations under Donald Trump, and she actually said like a lot of the stuff he's doing is correct, like way back when, and it just goes to show that obviously we know as people who look at this from a political perspective. That's how politics works, obviously. But the general public is obviously looking at this and saying, "Hey, look, these people are hypocrites," because a couple years ago they were praising Trump, they were riding the Trump wave, the MAGA wave, they were riding it, and now since there's a fall in the MAGA wave because of rise of the Democrat Party's campaigns um, after post COVID-19, where Donald Trump had a significant fall in regards to his presidency and his performance. They are using the anti-Trump rhetoric to go forward. They're saying that he's anti this, he doesn't respect our country, tying January 6th allegations obviously, and that's harming their public lookout. And now we get to Vivek Ramaswamy because he's a very interesting candidate in all of these actually. He's the only one who's like not going as Donald Trump per se. I mean, I've seen him like obviously hint to some things wherein like Donald Trump's criticism because obviously Trump isn't perfect and he has to run against Donald Trump as well in the future, so we can't be like all hunky dory and praise about him. But Vivek Ramaswamy actually he doesn't have like an anti-Trump stance. He's very anti-deep state and establishment. That's something that Donald Trump really invokes. He invokes the deep state. He says that the deep state's a problem for everything. He goes at them. He goes at what both of them call the three-letter agencies. So that's his narrative, and he's going towards like a more unified American concept, wherein color, race, and religion, according to him, shouldn't really be a match in regards to the society. There's like an American identity, and he's not using his identity. He's not like being like, "Oh, I'm Indian, so vote for me." He's very much attacking the other side, the Democrat side, but he's not even saying that it's their fault. He's saying it's the system's fault. So his concept is change the system. And not coming to Donald Trump, who has a similar outlook. I mean, obviously we know that President Trump, when he was in office and when he was after, when he ran for 2016 against Hillary Clinton, he obviously said like, "Oh, like I am here for change. I'm not here for to be part of the system. I'm against the system." Right? He obviously isn't a very orthodox politician. He's very unorthodox, and we saw in the late 2010s that there was a rise in populism and rise in populist entities, wherein anything anti-system was working out around the world. And we saw that this worked in the United States as well. I mean, like we got President Trump to be president of the United States, and he was very unorthodox in his way of action. We know that some of the foreign policy decisions that he made, albeit could have messed up some of the U.S.'s um, short-term goals. Long-term, the United States having its own economic impacts and fixes in Donald Trump's side and Vivek Ramaswamy and people who are not. I wouldn't like to call them isolationists, but I would like to call them people who believe the United States should withdraw from the world's, extensive involvement in the world. And both of these candidates say these things. And not to get very deep into recently what the debates have been about, for example, the war in Ukraine, Vivek and Donald Trump have a very nuanced perspective that is actually very like anti what the Democrats and what the other three Republican candidates are advocating for. So all the candidates, the President Biden and the three, Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, and Ron DeSantis, they're all very pro funding the Ukraine effort because obviously they believe that the United States has a role, has a obligation to be in a conflict wherein Russia is involved in. And Vivek and Donald Trump are both very, very pro end the war. If there's concessions to give the concessions. Costing a lot of money, costing a lot of lives, costing a lot of American support, which isn't necessary. Like the U.S. doesn't really have any stakes in this war. If Ukraine wasn't pushed to join NATO, for example, if those provocations didn't take place, maybe Russia wouldn't have invaded Ukraine. That's the concept that these two are kind of running on. And they're trying to say that, look, there's Russian-speaking territory in Ukraine, which has to be ceded to the Russians. And that's what they came for, according to this narrative. And that the Ukraine war doesn't really need the United States to be present at all time, because if Ukraine, for example, joins NATO and Russia decides to invade Ukraine again, then we have an issue wherein the United States has to invoke NATO and go in. And that costs American lives, and we're already costing a ton of American money. And interestingly, I mean, it's similar perspective regards to the conflict in the Middle East currently. So the United States is throwing a lot of money at the issue, and these countries, Ukraine, the country in the Middle East, has a lot to do. They can fend out for themselves, and the United States doesn't need to be directly involved. Vivek has said that like the United States can provide diplomatic cover for some nations, but military support in regards to arms and ammunitions and in regards to financial aid is very difficult for the United States to provide continuously, considering the U.S. has its own issues out back home, infrastructural issues, education issues, issues in regards to healthcare, which American people are now more focused about. One thing I wanted to mention is that the war in Afghanistan, for example, when the United States was in Afghanistan, President Trump, when he withdrew from Afghanistan, the United States, it was actually a very popular reaction, and even the Democrats in the United States, people who support the Democratic Party, were also very pro the withdrawal, right? Because they didn't want to send American soldiers, use American aid, use American money, weaponry in Afghanistan for so many years because it cost too much for the United States to hold on to. And something that President Joe Biden continued on with, albeit the withdrawal was a bit messy, but he still continued with this effort because it was a very popular thing to do. Currently, the American people are on the same kind of path. They're telling the U.S. leadership, look, we don't want to be involved in these conflicts, wherein, American lives can be lost and American money is used. Therefore, we want that the United States pulls its support for Ukraine in regards to its continuous military support, continuous financial support, and the conflict in the Middle East, stop pumping money in there because there's a situation where there's a humanitarian crisis, um, wherein there's borderline ethnic cleansing and genocide. And on one side, there's this war which could rage on for 5, 6, 7, however many years. It's kind of like a bear trap for Russia. And the United States people are saying, look, we can't continue to fund this. So now the narrative is actually weighing in. And now to get to President Biden and his support system currently and how it's shaky. And it looks that President Trump is actually doing better than him in the polls, is doing better than him in the public opinion, is because of what's going on in the Middle East. And it's because of what's going on in Europe. The people of America are very fed up with the United States pumping money in, right? And this money can be used for a lot of issues back home. Healthcare. There's an issue with cheaper healthcare necessities. And a lot of people in the U.S., their belief is that the United States could do a lot of things back home. And we know that inflation has been high. We know that the economic situation has been very dire actually recently. And because of this reason, President Biden has started to lose extensive support from his voter base. The conflict in the Middle East has like really wrecked it, and the critics argue that the administration's handling of it has been very weak, and there's been a lot of domestic repercussions for this. And the Biden administration's economic policies, um, the economic strategies are very flawed, and inflation, rising commodity prices. There's a lot of international turmoil which the United States could have um, fixed up for its own economic good. And so a lot of these multifaceted reasons are the why that President Biden is losing his public support, and President Trump, who albeit has a lot of issues in regards to his legal issues, is still rising as more popular. But with the recent issues in regards to the Colorado and Maine kind of blocking his bid for election, I wonder, for example, what's going to go on in the future because he does have 91 criminal charges and he is indicted. Now, will he be convicted? That's another story. And that's the issue with America's political system is that since there's two parties, um, what we're looking at here is that if it's a Democrat, that Democrat is voting because they don't like the Republican view of things. And if a Republican is voting, they're voting because they don't like the Democratic view of things. They're not trying to build reform in their own party, right? We know that President Trump has made his share of mistakes, but we also know that if he does not run for president, then there are other people in the Republican Party who might not be as capable. And the Democrat Party, we have President Biden, who's just there, and because he's the president of the United States, he's running for re-election. And if you ask Democrats, um, they will say that President Biden is not the accurate choice for who should be running for president. But because he's the president of the United States, his re-election bid is on the cards. But there could be many other political candidates. Obviously, there's the independents, which I will not touch upon. We have RFK Jr., for example. And RFK Jr. is an interesting personality. If you look at what he says, things are a bit conspiracy on his end, which people tend to side with. If I'm being honest here, a lot of people have a lot of opinions in regards to the U.S. and how the government works, which match RFK Jr.'s thought process, right? But he's not popular enough, in my opinion, to win the presidency based off of an independent candidacy. He used to be a Democratic candidate, obviously, due to his mm, own father, and because JFK was also a Democrat. But he has moved to become an independent, and I don't know if that's going to be effective. I don't think it's going to be effective at all, because the U.S. sadly is a two-party system, which, in my opinion, has a lot of flaws. The political spectrum in the United States, because now we get two choices and you have to vote for one of them. Look how many candidates there are, different points of views. The Republicans have a big caucus. The Democrats have a big caucus. I mean, if you look at the tent, it's huge. I mean, we have people like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ilhan Omar, and the Democrat Party who aren't going to run for election. We don't know. Maybe in the future they will, but if they're not running right now, they have a different point of view than President Biden. Obviously, they have a different viewpoint on the economic system. They have a different point of view in the social arena of things. They're more vocal about what the conflict in the Middle East, the reality in regards to it. They're not siding completely with the Democratic government right now, right? And we know the Republican Party, although I know that most media observants say that there's kind of like a very fixed amount of what they do. If you look at them, they all have a very vast range of opinions and thoughts. President Trump is way more extreme than someone like Nikki Haley or someone like Ron DeSantis, who are very system based. You know what I mean? They're very system. They're ingrained in the system. That's how in the Democrat Party we see that people like President Biden and Bernie Sanders, you guys are like into the system of American politics. Sir Bernie Sanders is a little bit different. He has his own opinion, kind of go out of the system. But President Biden, for example, and we know in 2016 when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was running for president, she's also a part of the system. She was Secretary of State, right? And Nikki Haley right now is a very big part of the system, the Republican Party, where she was the ambassador of the United States for the U.S. She was a military contractor. She was making so she's part of the system, right? Someone like Vivek, someone like President Trump, they're very anti-system. They're not part of the system, which tells you that the Republican caucus is very big. It's very big, very vast. The tent there, and the tent on the Democrat side is also very big. And that calls for multiple ideological parties. I think that the Democrats being reduced to just one person at the end of the day, and the Republicans being reduced to one person at the end of the day, when there's such a vast point of view. And then what happens is that if your candidate in the primaries doesn't make it, right, then you're just voting for the Republican Party because you don't like the Democrat. And then if your person does not make it the presidency or the candidacy in the Democrat Party, you're just voting for the Democrats because you don't like the Republicans. And that's a flaw in the system, obviously. And that's why a lot of people get fed up with the fact that, okay, at the end of the day, we have two people who might not be the best and they're both running for president. And what do we do? Well, if you had other options, maybe there could have been a different way of things and a different system. For stability, the system is perfect, but once we've been stabilized, once the economy has been running, once we are good enough to move on, maybe we need some changes in our system, but that's a long discussion. So that was my analysis about the 2024 elections. Who do I think is going to win? It's very early to not too early, but it's kind of early to judge right now since we still have the presidential debates between President Biden and President Trump, which are going to be if President Trump attends them. Um, I think that those two are going to be the candidates, President Trump and President Biden. I don't think other states are going to block President Trump from running for election again. I think that these were kind of warning signs for President Trump to deal with his legal issues. Um, Between the two, I think that the recent issue in the Middle East has really, really, really taken a toll on President Biden. His silence is kind of deafening, and a lot of young voters, they are not okay with voting with him because they believe that he's been complacent and he's not really done. He's not been up to the task, and obviously that just leaves the choice of not voting, and that's dangerous for young voters because they're not part of the electoral system. Now, that's not to say that these young voters are encouraged to vote for President Trump. No, they're just not going to vote, right? That's a big possibility. That means that a lot of your population, when they are turning 18, they're not going to go to vote because they're very, very aggravated with the situation right now. That's why this two-party system is very harmful because you now have two candidates. And what if you don't agree with both of them, right? And the issue is a lot of people don't agree with President Biden, and a lot of people don't agree with President Trump. They don't agree with either of them. So their decision is we're not going to vote. And to fill that vacuum, there'll be old voters, people who are older, in the South and some other areas. And you might get a skewed, flawed perception of what the American people want. Possibly, I'm not saying that that's going to be the flawed perception, but many people can possibly later on in the future, when this election is discussed, once the results come out, people will say that maybe this is a flawed and skewed perception of American politics. But that's again because of our system. And I want to lead off with that. So, in my opinion, I think that there's a possibility that President Trump could become the president of the United States once again. But that's just a analysis at this point in time. Looking at the political climate right now, looking at how things are running against the president of the United States currently, it's a possibility. If if the Biden administration changes up some of its policies in regards to the Middle East and Europe, you never know. 2 3 months in politics is a lot. So for the wind to change, and you never know. Maybe President Biden can become popular in the youth again if he takes decisions which seem like they're pro human rights and are irrespective of what country and what issues are going on. There's a kind of clear line because people are very, very aggravated. People are very pissed off, very angry right now. And I'm personally confused myself in regards to what the next step is going to be because it's been a lot of um, unequivocal support. And if President Biden withdraws that support, it's going to be an interesting domestic situation because then his popularity might rise again because of those steps. We'll see what he does. But as of now, I think that based off the current air in American politics right now, and according to what I've seen in regards to the youth and in regards to people who are not as old and people who are like from the age bracket of 18 to about 45, I think that President Biden is losing popularity, which might mean that President Trump gets a kick. But yeah, that's my analysis. Subscribe to our channel, and see you in the next video where we'll be discussing Pakistani politics and its analysis in regards to crazy things that are happening over there. Thank you.